So in Journeys North, even though the book is largely set in 2007 about myself and Frodo and 4 other much younger hikers, it still blows me away. It amazes me that these younger hikers trust me with their stories and their backstories. It does. Here, I'm going to take you back to 1962, August 4th. It was a Saturday. Yeah. In 1 second, let's go out of screen share. There we go. Okay, here I am again. I'll read to you. Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever read to someone in your life? Frodo, my wife and I, will occasionally a book that we really like or want to, we'll read. We'll take either take turns or one of us will read it. In fact, one of the Mountaineers, A Blistered Kind of Love, many years ago, written by a guy and a man and a woman, and we would trade off reading the chapters. It was really a dear way to read the book. Saturday, August 4th, 1962. Dana Yelverton had almond eyes, delicate freckles, and an oh-so-pale skin. So said Chris, a fellow teen hiker with a serious crush on her. She was out on a church-sponsored weekend trek through Goat Rocks with her best friend, Margie. Both were high school students from Bellevue, Washington, with plans to go to Whitworth College together and become missionaries. Lured forward by the prospect of the lower trail ahead, the church group hiked on in a driving rain uphill toward old snowy mountain. Dana's and Margie's, this was 1962, cotton clothes soaked through as rain changed to sleet and then into a freakish blizzard. It's a whiteout, Margie thought, as the group of 26 struggled to stay together. As they broke into ever smaller clusters, Dana was left exposed, wet, and freezing. Her prospective boyfriend got frostbite, but he barely mentioned that when recalling the experience. I was with Dana at the end, holding her to keep her as warm as I could. We were waiting for more people in a sleeping bag to use as a litter. At the moment, I could see the group coming up the mountain. She passed. Her pulse stopped. Much later, Margie named her own daughter Dana. Margie says that they built that shelter, the Everton shelter, to remember Dana, and they built it with the hope that it would offer protection for others caught in whiteout conditions. For many years, it did. 2007, our year, you'd almost have to know where it was because it was a pile of rocks. Yeah. In 2007, we were struck by early, once-a-generation storms. September 29th, Roswell, young woman who I'd seen get airlifted out in a helicopter rescue. You know, in town, Giardia is a pain. You go to your doctor, you take Flagyl. But on the trail, when you're away, you run at both ends. Liquid is sucked out of you like Dracula, just taking liquids out of your neck. And it becomes life-threatening. And we watched her, to her blessed relief and luck, run into a fire crew in the backwoods that was out on a practice run, and they were practicing with a helicopter nearby because she had covered 2 miles in 4 hours to get to that spot, and she still had 4 miles of trailhead. But after going to hospital, she got back on trail. Roswell did, and she's hiking north, gets caught in the first snowstorm, approaching Old Snowy, and she starts leaving notes. Each time there's a trail sign, every hour, 2 hours, the notes begin with her name, where she is, her mother's contact info, and says, I'm doing okay. I'm happy. It's snowing. It's not too bad. But as the snow gets deeper, the notes change tone. One says, I'm not so happy anymore. And the last one, she leaves. This is 2007. The last one she leaves just has the simple information of her name, the date, the time, and her mother and her mother's contact. And I'm heading north. Late afternoon, as the snow has piled up, drifts higher than her ankles and climbing higher, she passes a mound, and that mound is the Dana Everton shelter. She knows she just needs to get past Old Snowy Mountain, get across the knife edge, and then it's downhill to White Pass, downhill. And she'll be out. She'll get to White Pass. There's a store, civilization. Conditions get worse and worse. And the PCT used to run up and over Old Snowy, and that's the route she starts to take, Karen's. She goes up and up. The snow gets deeper. At one point, she's about to take a step and realizes there's a cliff right in front of her. And soon after that, she says, I have to shut down. She's never camped in the snow, but she knows enough to stomp a pad 2 feet deep to make almost a half of a snow cave. She has not drunk in hours. She has not eaten in hours. She's finally put on every scrap of clothing she had. Her watch cap. She has pulled her extra bra over her head. She's huddled in her sleeping bag, and with a shaking hand, she gets out her journal and is searching for her pen because she wants to write a final note. And in the book at that point, I stop. Gosh, and I guess I'm going to do something cruel because I'm going to stop again here right now. Yeah. But what I am going to show you is I'm going to screen share. I'm going to show you what the shelter looks like. People invested a lot of time and effort and a lot of love. And Margie did. And if any of you know her, by the way, please let her know that we mentioned her friend's name again. And here in its prime was the Dana Everton shelter. Maybe some of you saw it and it looked like this. And here many years later is what it looks like. And today it's even much worse. Yeah. Yeah. So how did I get here? How did I get here as an author? How did I get here as a triple crowner? 3 separate 5-month periods. I've just lived up there and hiked. Was I born in a household and that's what they did? No. If you look at little Barney Mann in the house he was growing up in, you'd never, there in a crowded part of Los Angeles, have predicted this was going to be a hiker. But my parents took me to Boy Scout meetings. And at age 13, I went on my first 50-mile backpacker in the Sierra, and who could not fall in love with that? I'd always been the shortest boy, and which is a pain for a boy. It's hard. It's hard not to be picked on. But out there, my 80-pound frame, that's 80 pounds of me and close to 40 pounds of pack. We wrestled to a draw. It rained every day, but I saw stuff I'd see on TV, and it wouldn't be behind bars like it'd be in the zoo. Beavers and bats and the entire week we saw one other pair of people. There was a register up at a pass that today would have, the Sierra Nevada would have a couple of people, and that register had not been signed for 18 months. And as long as I kept up, I was the same as the big boys. I fell in love with it out there. I did. And it's good I did, because 10 years later, when I met my wife, she would tell you, yeah, if he wasn't a backpacker, I wouldn't have married him. And in fact, the gift we asked the summer we got married, the big gift we asked our families is, will any of you, our immediate family, parents and sibs, will you come on a 10-day backpack with us in the Sierra Nevada? And about 5 of them did. And I'll show you a picture in a moment. Yeah. When we first started having kids, our son's 1-year-old. By the time he's 1-year-old, he's been backpacking. Frodo, Sandy, my wife, carrying him, and me humping, 40 by 50 pounds. He's been backpacking 3 different times, much to my parents, the non-campers' chagrin. Yeah. And our kids backpack as they grew up. We did every summer, we did some, but somewhere in there in the 90s, we started talking seriously about the Pacific Crest Trail in 2003. 2003, we through hiked the John Muir Trail to see if we'd still come off it really wanting to do this, because you have to really want it to do this. And in 2007, we did the Pacific Crest Trail. Let me show you a couple pictures. Yeah, okay. This is, I'm going to ask you, who is this guy? Oh, I'm about to, Frodo will be embarrassed. I'm going to show you this, the slide 2 pages up. I haven't done that before. This guy is 13, and he's out there. You know, he's living in a Disneyland, what you would see in the Walt, you know, on the Walt Disney show on Sunday nights, and living in real wilderness. Every scrap of clothing I have on is cotton, right? And that pack, of course, is an aluminum frame pack. And that's the guy who fell in love with backpacking. Yeah. Next one is the summer. Summer we went on a 77-mile trip, 10 days. Pulled our families along, had a great time. That's me, and that's Frodo. We are now 43 years married. Love it. And gosh, I look at that pack and I go, oh my God, what is he carrying on his back? Yeah. And you'll see the shirt. Some people recognize the name, Steve Prefontaine. That was the first annual Prefontaine trail run that they had. Now this next photo, Frodo's going to shoot me. I haven't showed this, I think, in any book talk so far, but I saw it today and I said, I will share it with my Mountaineers friends. This is the man that Sandy fell in love with. I don't think I would try to rock that photo again. And in fact, you'll see the hair color is a bit different. Yeah. I'm sorry. You may not be amused, but I'm amused by it. I love it. 2007. This is what we look like starting Pacific Crest Trail. This is the Southern Terminus Monument. You will never see our clothes that clean again. And I look at those faces and I think they are so innocent. So look at these set of faces, folks. Look at these, because this is the Canadian border. Far right, kneeling is Sandy, my wife, and the guy with the Santa Claus-like almost beard is me. That's what happens over 5 months. Two of the people I really feature in Journeys North, my book, is a blazer in the green jacket, and seated below her is Dalton. And you'll hear a little more about them in the next excerpt I do. All these folks have just culminated a journey of 5 months, and they're at the Canadian border. Yeah, this was Team Snowplow. Most of you are familiar with the Pacific Crest Trail, but I thought at least for a moment I'd put up a map, and I think you can see my you can see my arrow. So it starts down here in Campo. Folks should carry at least 4 to 6 liters of water because the first 20 miles is waterless. Agua Dulce, and I have an excerpt reading. I'll be reading the last one will be from Agua Dulce. 450 miles up trail. I was on trail for 3.5 weeks, almost 4 weeks, and I talked to a cousin in Los Angeles. And she says, where are you? And I realized I've been walking for 3.5, 4 weeks. I've walked 450 miles, and all I am is a half-hour drive from her in Los Angeles. But then we start heading north, and we head north with great vigor until the Great Bend portion. The trail used to go straight from Mount Shasta, straight up there. But these days it goes through some wonderful wilderness, the Trinity Alps and such. But there's this day, you can barely see it in here, a full day. You are hiking south. Give me a break. You are hiking south. I hate it. I didn't hate it, but I found it frustrating. I get this prime directive every night on the trail. And most nights in the PCT, it's clear. Every night I go out and I brush my teeth. And as part of it, I'd look up in the sky. I'd find the Big Dipper, go 6 links from the bottom of the Big Dipper, find a North Star, and just look north and think north. Yeah, I can't head south. Yeah. So I'm going to read to you from close to the very end. We are 60 miles from Canada, Rainy Pass. It feels like we have this in the bag. We are early. It's September 29th. We can taste Canada. We need 3 days and 2 nights. And we head out from Rainy Pass ourselves, a number of people we've hiked around for a long time. And this is our, I get emotional thinking about it. Here we go. One flake was how it began. The first flurries started in the middle of the night, and they were as soft and harmless as photographs in a winter calendar. There was enough to catch in a tongue, and then enough to stick. Not enough yet for me to even get out my camera. White splotches marked the ground. Evergreen bows, frosted white. It was so beautiful you could pinch yourself if you watched from inside a window. But as the night wore on, the snow began to build and pile up, and to grow increasingly heavy. Our nylon tents, pitched in a deserted gravel parking lot off of Highway 20 at Rainy Pass, started to sag. The first time I got up to knock off snow was 2 a.m. Blazer didn't hear me. Blazer in the tent next to us didn't hear me as I brushed the snow off her tent as well. She'd been restless and groggy as she went to bed. Her tarp tent had a single pole located right next to her head. Aside from that, the structure relied on tent stakes and tension to stay upright. Under the ever-thickening winter blanket, the tension started losing as the snow began winning. Blazer woke in the wee hours to find her tent collapsing. First, she felt it on her feet and curled them up. Then it began to press on her knees. She didn't want to get out of her warm sleeping bag. When the tent had bowed so much that she felt it pressing against her side, she tried to knock the snow off from the inside, but her efforts were futile. Yeah. In the morning, Blazer's sleeping bag was wet in places, not a good sign. And she ate breakfast inside her tent. Afterwards, she dragged her gear to a nearby outhouse, pit toilet outhouse, and tried to warm up as she packed. Frodo and I were talking, looking at options and maps. We could hitch 35 miles east to Winthrop to dry out and let the storm blow through before returning. Blazer listened with increasing impatience. Cut it out, she thought. Stop weighing pros and cons. It's snowing harder. Let's get going. We have to get over the pass before we can't see the trail. We started the 5-mile climb to Cutthroat Pass in 4 inches of snow. We were hunkered down, focused, even as snow seeped into our running shoes. Then 4 inches became 6, and 6 became 8, rising to drifts, climbing up our calves. Visibility faded in and out as we walked through whiteouts. Blazer was sobered by how fast the snow obscured the trail. Working hard, put her feet in our footsteps. She stifled the thought, we need to turn back. She'd been cold when she started, and even the exertion of the trail wasn't warming her up. Now she alternated between jamming her ungloved hand in her armpit and down her pants. She had lost a glove. Near the top of the 2,000-foot climb, we reached a series of exposed, sharp switchbacks. Blazer rounded one and exclaimed, Dalton! White crystals hung from his beard as he emerged from the fog, but Blazer's elation soon turned to puzzlement when she saw that Dalton was with Chigger, Figaro, Guts, and Chugwagon. What gives? Why are they walking toward us? That's when we realized the 5 of them were heading back. I have hiked in snow. I have taught snow backpacking. I wanted to head on, so I started to talk it out. Chuckwagon told us it's crazy up there and it's only getting worse. Listening to me, Blazer oscillated between her strong impulse to proceed north and her gut's directive to get out of the cold. And while I was pumping words into the fast-falling flakes, Frodo was staring at Blazer's bare hand and Blazer's flimsy, broken jacket. In a moment's lull, Blazer softly announced, her gut feeling be damned. If Scout and Frodo go on, I'm going too. That left the others quiet, neither agreement nor dissent. As I began talking again, Blazer pressed her numb fingers hard into her armpit. It took me 10 minutes to talk myself out, to agree it was time to turn and head back down the trail. I lifted a foot and took a step. Something cracked inside, stopping me dead in my tracks. South. I can't do south. For 5 months, I had followed the prime directive, hike north. Mom and Dad were going to meet me at Manning Park. I opened my mouth and started talking again. Frodo and I had a tacit agreement. If one of us felt strongly about an issue, we each had the right to exercise a veto. This wasn't just for the trail, but for all aspects of our lives. In 30 years, neither of us had ever taken that nuclear option step. But now, in the increasingly heavy snow, Frodo looked up and said, that's it. I'm exercising my veto. My next sentence hung waiting in my mouth. Then I turned, lifted a foot, and started downhill, walking south. Let me get a screen sharing this for a moment. Yeah. So let me tell you something. Our hike was it's now 14 years ago, and I'm 69. We were out there for 155 days. I can tell you now, I can tell you a story for each and every day we were out there. Multiple stories. We imprint differently out there. What other period can you look back in your life and do that? I think 5 years ago. I was working, I was doing whatever. Even for a couple days in a row, do you think you could tell a story? It's a wonder being out there along trail. So here's a day. Day 42. We have just come to the Kenny Meadows store. And I can recall these 15 minutes like I had just stepped and was still in the Kenny Meadows shower. Yeah, for $2 at the Kenny Meadows store, they'll give you a ratty towel and the right to go and take a shower in their open air showers, one of the best showers I've ever taken. And here, story of myself and Tony, one of the other 6 primary folks in the Kenny Meadows shower. Yeah. Nothing on the trail was quite like the Kenny Meadows showers. The 2 stalls stood side by side in a rise behind the store. There was no roof, only a sheet of plywood for center wall, and the sideboards didn't quite reach the rough concrete floor. All afternoon, guys and gals, their ankles, calves, and feet exposed, luxuriated in limitless hot water before cycling out to allow the next hiker in. For this privilege and a powdered towel, hikers exchanged $2 at the store's counter. I closed the shower curtain, stripped, and picked up a misshapen bar of soap. Allegheny, the 65-year-old who had previously hiked the Appalachian Trail, was in the adjoining stall. If I ever started feeling proud of myself, I'm through hiking at age 55. I thought of Allegheny. During the 5 minutes that we overlapped, I listened to a rundown of his 3 marriages from the other side of the plywood wall. Wife number 1 had given him a choice. What's it going to be, me or your guitar? Sitting round at the campfire at the Trail Angels Softlies, Frodo and I had heard Allegheny still singing and strumming. When it comes to divulging life stories, a psychiatrist's couch couldn't hold a candle to these shower stalls. Scout, is that you? The voice was Tony's. He'd stepped into the stall vacated by Allegheny. I rubbed the soap hard against my flanks as I tossed a question over the partition. Hey, Tony, were you ever married? Scout, I was married for 14 years. I'd had no idea. He said he had changed and his wife hadn't. The marriage ended and he'd gone off to hike the Appalachian Trail. They were still friends. Before I knew it, I told Tony a capsule version of Frodo's and my marriage. Under the warm jet of the shower, the next step felt easy. Without a pause, I told Tony the second great story of our marriage. Tony, did you know that Frodo and I were separated for 3 years? Did I just really say that? Really, Tony said, and then he was quiet as I shared the details in a deadpan voice. I squeezed shampoo into my hands, ground my nails into my scalp, and clamped my mouth shut. Tony continued with his story. I was a landscaper once. I loved planting and the feel of good soil in my hands. There was pride in his voice, but after 10 years, they moved me up to sales. It's what I was supposed to do. Everyone expected it. Tony's hands lost their calluses and he manned a desk indoors. I was in sales for 5 years. The flat tone said it all. Scout, those were the last 5 years before I left my wife. He stopped abruptly, as if someone had hit pause. Birds wheeled overhead, stellar jays and Clark nutcrackers. Something felt off kilter. Tony's baritone skipped a few beats as pine needles blew inside the shower stall. Through the splintered plywood, Tony continued. So there was this day. I was in the kitchen. It was a Saturday and I was alone. It was before I split up with my wife. I looked down and I saw I was holding a knife. It was in my hand, Scout. I have no memory of how it got there. I can't remember what happened next. Maybe my wife called me from her work, but whatever it was, my next thought was, I'm not doing this now. The birds still wheeled about on the breeze. Rinsing myself clean, I pictured Tony setting down the knife. I shut the water off, The shower jet dribbled on the floor. As I dried off and dressed, the cement slab rasped like a coarse file against my bare soles. It felt so good to be alive. I left our confessional stall and another shower buddy entered. Tony and I walked out again into the brilliant Sierra sun. He had felt safe enough with me to speak of a knife in his hands. And in that moment, I felt safe enough to hear the story. Yeah. We live life large out there. We talk differently to each other. Every day out there, I would hear a story from someone. I might not hear once from a best friend in an entire year. So the next one, we're going to switch a little gears, and I'm going to tell you both the story that's in the book, and I'm going to tell you the backstory too. This is our big bear story. Big bear story. I've seen a lot of bear on trail. Actually, always black bear. I've seen lots of grizzly prints, and I actually still hope, I think, to see my first grizzly in the wild. But I've seen a lot of black bear, and we have hiked now 1,000 miles up Pacific Crest Trail. We've gone through the entire Sierra Nevada, and Frodo and I, my wife and I, we have not seen a bear. Everyone else has seen 1, 2, 3 bears. They got pictures. They have their bear stories. We don't have yet. So we're to the west of Lake Tahoe. A day till we get to the trailhead. We're camping by ourselves. We would switch off. One night she'd do dinner, and I'd sit at camp, and vice versa. And that night she was doing dinner, cooking our little alcohol stove back in the day, and dinner's there. And I'm about 20 feet away from her, setting up our. We were in cowboy camp at night, so setting up our ground sheet. And I look, and 50 feet the other side of her, me, Frodo, 50 feet the other side of her, is the largest black bear I have seen in the wild. It just comes out from behind a rock. And in the first moment I can see him, I can see that this beast, beautiful, height of summer, tawny skin, muscles rippling, large, massive head. And as I write, and maybe it's a slight exaggeration, he was the size of a small Volkswagen. I can see he's not aware of us. The wind must be such, and he's looking obliquely from us. So what's my first move? I'm to this day still embarrassed by it. My first move, me, my wife, the bear, first move is hand down here, up, and I get off 2 camera shots, right? And then I go, and I get Frodo's attention. She looks at me, and I nod up. She sees the bear, takes our pot of dinner, puts it in the bear vault, bear canister, cranks it down, comes over, stands by me, and says, "What do we do?" She knows what to do. We want to be big, stand tall, and let them know that we're human. So we stood side by side, thrust our hands up in the air, looking big. And what do? We sang in 2-part harmony, Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. Yeah. The bear slowly, as we get to the first chorus, turns his head, lets us know whose home we are in, and then slowly turns and goes off. And that's about the time we notice that there's bear scat on the ground. And that's where the story ends in the book. But the full story is we hike on for 4 miles, we camp, and the next morning, we are dying to come across some of the people we've been leapfrogging around, because now we have our bear story. We got a couple pictures to share. And sure enough, after 10 miles, we come across 4 people, Mr. and Mrs. Pooler, the Pooler Bears, and 2 others, Disco Dan and Malka. Everyone has trail names out there. It's great. And Frodo grabs the camera, runs up to him, and this is what she says. She says, Scout sees the bear, tells me, and then gets these 2 pictures. And she's showing him the pictures. You caught the order there, right? We're 30 years married, and I have a decision to make then and there on the spot. Will I let that forever be the story? Or in front of other people, do I tell her I took the photos first? And I just couldn't let that be the story. So I tell her, San, I actually took those 2 photos first. It's the only time I heard Mr. Pooler say a full sentence. And the sentence was, Scout, that's a lot of candy and flowers. Yeah. So there you have our the full story the full story of our bear story. Want to share another, it's not in the book. Yeah. And this is one I teased folks. I teased the Tacoma chapter. If any of you remember that. I did a talk for them. About 100 of them showed up. It was great in October. Still was virtual, of course. And I told them then that those of them who show up here for the Be Wild event, I've held back, and I have it'll be almost entirely different material. But I teased them with this. I said, if you show up, I'll tell you about the letter we received from our son's old girlfriend. They had been together for 7 years at Timberline Lodge, and why, when I read the first line, the room got deathly quiet. Yeah. So this is the letter. I actually have it here. This is the letter. I think, there we go. The lighting is such you have to, I won't worry about it. Sent to Timberline Lodge. We'd heard Sean's old girlfriend was being a ranger in the Sierra Nevada, and we arranged to briefly meet her, and we spent 20 minutes on the trail. We hadn't seen her in 7 years. Great. And we get to Timberline Lodge, where we're going to spend a 0 day. We're going to eat. We are going to, yeah, someone just put in the chat, brunch, you bet. All you can eat brunch. Fresh squeezed orange juice. And it may come in 6-ounce glasses, but it's unlimited. I don't know how many of those puppies I piled up at our table. And the Cascade Dining Room is one of the top dining rooms in Oregon, but I need to stop there. I'll start going on and teeing off on the food. We're there for a 0 day. And it's a busy day. We have resupply to do. We have phone calls and contact to make. And I go down to pick up the box we have mailed. And I do to the down to the Y East Lodge down below. And they charge me $3 for the privilege of picking a box we spent $15 to mail there. And there's a letter, and I get charged $1 for the privilege of picking up the letter. Thank you very much. And I don't open the letter to that evening. So again, here's the envelope, and I pull out. I could see on the outside, it's from Sean's old girlfriend. That's nice. That's very dear of her to send that. Yeah. And I open the letter, and something falls out. This. There we go. This falls out. Frodo's in the room, and I start to read. And I can see the letter looks old. It's not new. And it's a bit ragged around the edges. See that? And it begins, Dear Mom and Dad. Wait a minute, this isn't from your Sean's old girlfriend. What's inside? Dear Mom and Dad, if you get this, you must have gone through 2 out of 3 states in the PCT. For me, it is April 2001. Sean had written this 6 years before. I thought of putting a cookie in with this, but I don't know if it would last. I really admire what you are doing. Maybe someday I'll do it. It must be rough. Yeah. From here to a ways ahead, I have been digging water drainage and clearing brush, though it may not show it years later. I hope you appreciate it. And then he wrote this. He says, I wonder where all of us are right now. You're now. Things must be okay if you're doing the Pacific Crest Trail. Yeah, that's the letter our son sent us there at a Timberline Lodge. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I've seen the chat, and I've seen there's a number of you who have slept at our house. And maybe some of you know this side of us. This is a side that you either want to hug us, or you want to give my wife and I a pair of white straight jackets. Yeah, we're either crazy or I love us. We have, over the last 15 years, we've hosted starting Pacific Crest Trail hikers at our San Diego house, pick them up at the airport, bus and train, feed them, let them stay for a day, 2 or 3, and then take them out to start the journey of a lifetime. Yeah. We've hosted 7,000 people at our house. Last year we could do it because COVID has prevented us. Last year's was 2019, and over 60 days we had 1,200 people stay with us. So let's see a tiny bit what that looks like. Got a screen share. And this is like juggling, folks, I got to talk, rub my belly, chew gum, and at the same my fingers, while I'm telling story, have to screen share and then have to get into PowerPoint and press the right button on PowerPoint. There we go. And we'll advance past there. We did these. All right. This was in that excerpt I read. This is the night with the snow building up in tents. And this is the day coming up that we are retreating. There's Blazer in the middle, Guts and Chuck Wagon, and that is ice in their beards, and we are retreating. I'm not sure why Blazer is smiling. Guts and Chuck Wagon are sharing the most appropriate message. And the next day, when we head out again, this is what it looked like. Remember, we're in trail running shoes, because that's what you wear back then. But this is my dear Frodo. And one of the few moments the next day that it was safe to take out a camera. But, oh, here's the Kenny Meadow shower. I forgot I put this photo in. That's great. That's what it looked like. Pretty accurate description, wouldn't you say? Yeah. And those guys have just shared each other their deepest, dark secrets. So I'm not sure why the one is laughing. Maybe his life story is funny. There we go. But this is what I want to share with you. You see myself with the gray and white hair in the middle and the tan shirt, and my wife, Frodo, right next to me in the bright aqua shirt. All those people have just had, they're in our backyard, and all those people have just had dinner at our house. And the vast majority of them, 60, will sleep at our house that night. Yeah. These days, because there's a permit limit in the PCT, a 50-day, we average a 40 a night only. Yeah. And this every morning out the trailhead, when we and volunteers who help us out, because this is no cost. We do this because we can. We tell people, please, no gifts and donations. We had so much love and kindness pour out to us when we were homeless looking hikers in 2007. And we get to be with these folks on the eve of their journey of a lifetime and help them get the 60 miles out to the middle of nowhere to start the Pacific Crest Trail. This is one day's worth of starters. Look at these faces. Each and every one of them has pointed to this for how long? Yeah, that they have. And the stories that come through our house, the stories. I'm going to tell you two. Actually, I'm going to tell you one. Yeah. And I will get out screen sharing. Here we go. And here we have a 6th grade math teacher is one of the folks comes. And he is he has at the monument, he's passing these papers out. And it turns out the day before, because he taught up to the day before, he asked his 6th grade students, he said, I'm going this long hike. You may understand it, but times it'll be really, really hard. And he gives them some construction paper about the size of a 5x8 card. Tells you, I want you to write an inspirational message, and I will give one of these to each and every starting hiker. And this is, I'll tell them, sometime on the trail, when you're really down and you need inspiration, open it up. And he gives them little seals, and they seal it, which already sounds maybe a little mistake. So he's telling us as 6th graders, telling them to write an inspiration message, and then seal it, and he's going to pass them out to people. And that's what he did. And he had extras. So he gave me the extras, and this is one I love. Hopefully it'll show up, right? Gosh, it's yellow. All right. That is, there you go. And the question is, what is that? Is it a chicken or is it a duck? And you've opened this in the middle of Mojave Desert. It's 95 degrees. There's no shade except for Joshua trees, and Joshua trees give essentially no shade. And you said, I'm 600 miles of trail, and I finally need to open this, and you do. And here's what your message says. It begins with, this is a chicken, not a duck. Hey, hiker, my chicken of motivation is here to help you through your worst times. Remember, you can do it. Me and my chicken believe. We heckin' love you. You can't make up this stuff, right? And one night, actually, it's back a ways in time because we still could eat indoors instead of serving outdoors for so many people. We were sitting around a dining room table, and it was full. We had 17 people. good number of them were Europeans, and they were chatting pretty loud and dominating the table. There's a young man from Portland who's sitting, hadn't said a word. And his dinner is beginning to wind down, and this brief lull. He says this, he says, yesterday I got out of the army. And the table goes pretty silent. And he proceeds to say that he was a turret gunner in Iraq. Half his body is exposed 12 to 14-hour shifts every day out there, and he'd get back to base and he'd just plug himself in front of a computer and dive in the internet. He said, then one day I came across the journal of a Pacific Crest Trail hiker, and I was hooked. And he looks at us all and he says this, he says, the reason why I am through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail is because I do not want Iraq to be the seminal event of my youth. Yeah. And we get to help all these people. We do. I have one final excerpt. It's about 4 minutes long, which I think carries me about right. And then Frodo's gonna come in and we'll do something special for you guys. Yeah. This is about 454 miles up the trail. It's Blazer, one of the six. Ourselves, we're at a Trail Angels house, maybe 40, 50 hikers. We bunched up. It's like 3 days worth of hikers because you're staying a day or 2 days. Agua Dulce, they have a 7-acre compound. Hikers are busy. They're washing their clothes. They're getting in touch with home, writing letters, resupplying around me. And that's set the scene. The wood of the guitar felt good in my hands, but I was unusually nervous. Each summer for 3 years, I'd stood on the All Nations Camp Lodge porch and faced down 100 yawning campers, hungry for breakfast. The last thing in their minds was singing with sleep, scratchy throats. Yet in moments, I'd have them serenading the day in a loud, joyous chorus. At night, I'd walk into a still rowdy cabin of teens with my guitar, sit on an empty bunk and start playing. So few of those kids ever got tucked into bed at home. Fewer still had parents sing to them, whether it be Blowing in the Wind or Puff Magic Dragon. I can still feel the wonder of that moment when squirming and giggling died down in the silence of rhythmic breathing again. Two things I love most: voices rising with mine in melody, and singing others quietly to sleep with a guitar. So how could I sit there with guitar feeling nervous? In the months since I'd last played at home, I'd grown a 1/2-inch long salt and pepper beard. The backs of both my hands bore trail scratches that resembled spider webs. Yet my right hand still had a set of carefully maintained 1/8-inch nails, perfect for strumming. On my thigh, I felt that full weight of the guitar pressing on a nasty cut, a souvenir from when I tripped on a tree root a day out of ripewood. But I wasn't thinking of the pain from the 2-inch gash in my leg or the lack of sleep over the past nights as I started in on leaving on a jet plane. I was thinking, if I sing, will anyone notice? Will anyone join in? Everything I play is so mired in the late 60s and early 70s. They're all so much younger. What might they know? I saw Bull look up from his gear. Built like a college lineman, Bull had 2 ball-bearing studs that thrust out from his lower lip. He's a caricature of the person you don't want to meet in a dark alley. But scratch that hard exterior, and underneath is a gentle giant. 20-something Bull was newly married to City Girl, his slender as a rail opposite. While Bull had through-hiked the Appalachian Trail, City Girl's first night sleeping outdoors was their first night on the PCT. Their unlikely adventure had started less than a year ago when City Girl found out she was pregnant. The two had laid out a full life of extensive plans centered around their new baby. But City Girl miscarried, leaving a gaping, empty space. They filled it with Bull's dream through hiking the PCT. Now 450 miles into their PCT hike, Bull got up from his cot, came over, and sat down on a hay bale. I watched as he moved his mouth along with the song. Out there was next. Near my age, he came over and sat beside Frodo on a hay bale covered by a horse blanket. Then came Cloud Spotter, Mr. Smiles. If PCT hikers had a BWOC, Big Woman on Campus, in 2007, that woman was Cloud Spotter. She was 23, outgoing to a fault, had through hiked the Jarmir Trail the previous summer, and was always organizing something. Mr. Smiles, a retired high school band director, had dreamed of this hike for years. They didn't know all the words, but with a little urging on my part, they all joined in the first chorus. My gaze drifted over the shoulders of Frodo and out there. There was movement on another cot. I know that girl. Didn't I meet her in town 10 days ago? What's her name? Blazer looked down, feeling embarrassed that she wanted to sing. It was a beautiful moment and she wanted to be there, but it took more motivation than she had. The other hikers are so awesome, she thought. She had been at the Softleys 2 or 3 days. Some had been at the Softleys 2 or 3 days, and they acted like brothers and sisters. In the crowd, Blazer felt so uncertain about how to fit in. She heard others talk about the two of us, Scout and Frodo, just like she'd heard others talk about Nadine. Something about us reminded Blazer of the friends' homes she had hung out in, the ones with parents she'd pretend were her own. She saw Frodo next to me, singing and looking at me from close by. Then something of the spirit of hiking 450 miles kicked in. I walked here just like everyone else. Blazer got up and met my gaze with a soft smile, different from the sassy smile I'd seen 10 days before. I hoped that Blazer saw the gratitude shine from my eyes as she sat on a hay bale next to out there and joined in with a strong alto voice. When she looked at me for a brief moment, I saw the eyes of my own children as I tucked them in the bed. In 2015, 8 years later, Frodo and I, with the full power of the state of Alaska on our shoulders, we married Blazer and her husband CJ. We officiated the wedding. And I have lived the 2 years ago, hold Blazer's firstborn in my arms. So lastly, I want to share something with you. If you were camping by us on the trail, you might hear this come from Frodo's MI-10. After 30 years married, we learned, do this slide, there we go. After 30 years married, we learned a few duets. And when you sing a duet with someone else, it's different. You are constantly tuning, and it's almost, after 30 years, it's a different way to give each other a hug. So you were on a starry night, you're camping, you just turned in, and she's saying, all right, enough with the introduction. Let's get on with this.
No, I'm thinking, oh man, I hope he gives me a note.
Yeah, I hope my note's right. Yeah. This is one of the duets you might hear come from our tent. It's not the bear one, but it's another one. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. Away, away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. Away,
Away,
I'm bound away,
I'm bound away,
across the wide Missouri. 'Tis 7 long years since last I saw you.
Since last I saw you.
Away, away, you rolling river. 'Tis 7 long years since last I saw you. Away, I join in. I'm bound away.
I'm bound away,
across the wide Missouri.
Actually, I have something I want to say. He was not embarrassed that he took the photo of the bear before he told me. Don't believe him.
This is 40 years marriage, folks. You can ask questions of me and her. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We're going to have a short Q&A. If you haven't read Journeys North, please pick it up. And if you have, and here I get to put in a small plug because authors have to be shameless. Please post a review on Amazon and Goodreads. Okay, Garrett, back to you.
Thank you, Barney. Thank you, Frodo, also for making an appearance. That was fantastic. Thank you for your stories of adventure and passion. Let's get to the questions. So the first one comes from Barbara. Let's just get this kind of easy one out of the way. What is the question that everyone loves to ask you? Like, what's the common question you always get about PCT?
Well, the question as a triple crowner that I get is, and the answer is PCT. The answer is, which of the trails are your favorite? And the question hikers get before they start, and unfortunately, especially women hikers, they get these two questions. One is, are you carrying a gun? And the other one is, what group are you going with? Because it's not like any of us could go out there by ourselves. We don't necessarily like those questions.
That's great. So this one comes from Lindsay Marmot Malone. Got a couple questions from her. Did you anticipate the social aspects of the trail and meeting other hikers would be so significant to you?
Marmot, excellent question. And by the way, it's good to hear your voice, Marmot. Both of us. In fact, Frodo, you want to answer that from afar? Yeah. Go ahead. She's coming in the picture.
Sorry.
Let's start answering.
So before the hike, I in particular thought it was going to be about the scenery and about, kind of meeting the physical challenge. And during the hike and after the hike, I realized that really what it was about was the people and the community.
Yeah.
Scout likes to say that out there, he found the community he always wanted to be part of, but never knew existed. And that really is true for both of us. Yeah.
I have, in the first month, I meet someone, I have a 10-minute conversation with them, and I see them 6 weeks later. And this is like running into a long lost best friend. If any one of you, and I mean this, even if you're listening, you're out there and you're part of our 2007 hike. If you came up here and asked me a big favor today, my first thought would be, how can I make this happen? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I'll do another one from Lindsay. This is a little bit of a question from your book. Have Frodo and Scout gone back to where there wasn't snow to hike Rainy Pass to the border?
Like 3 times.
Yes. Yeah.
It's gorgeous up there. That's one of our favorite sections of the trail.
And the first time we went back, I was already in the PCTA board. It was a year later, and we went back with some board members to do a bakery to border hike, going from Stehekin Bakery, the 90 miles to the border. And we get back to Rainy Pass and we hike in 10 miles, and the same snow, the same snow that turned us back, that gave us trouble the first time, is still there. And the people we're hiking with are not comfortable. In fact, they've decided they're going to turn around. And I thought, these are my new friends, my new fellow board members. I'm going to turn around. And instead, they gave us the gift of saying it was okay, the two of us and another woman who was who was comfortable and in skills. And we went on and we did that section again.
Yes.
Wow. On that note, Christy asked, how do you personally overcome fear? Fear of not finishing the trail, fear of injury, fear of stream crossings. What is your process for that?
You want to do that?
No.
Okay. So I'm not sure you like my answer.
Fearless?
Well, no, not fearless at all. But it's flip side of that. Someone asked me, when was the time you're most fearful? When did you feel fear out there? And I can't say that I have. Have I been in dangerous situations? Yes. At the end of the PCT, we had a day, Frodo's birthday. Like, this is the introduction. I'll give you the punchline introduction. The introduction's Frodo's birthday. Things are so dire. Both of us have forgotten it's her birthday. And when Blazer remembers that it is and asks, what do you want for your birthday? And Frodo says, I want to get out of the day alive.
And I meant it.
What I'm feeling in that moment is I'm feeling intense. I'm feeling 100% on, and I'm feeling focused.
And I've had an adrenaline rush going on for the previous 48 hours.
Yeah. So that's my own truth. Maybe a little bit of fear would be healthier.
Motivating. So Scout, can you talk a little bit about your work you do now with the PNTS and the importance of equity and inclusion in the outdoors?
How much time do you have? So in this week alone, I've had 3 different sessions, small meeting, large group meetings, specifically focused on the important equity, inclusion, Jedi, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ plus work that that this older white male is trying to help elevate and bring to the forefront, and bring more people to the forefront. Gosh, where do I even start? I'll start one place, just in the obvious. And let me first say to those out there, I recognize my white privilege. I'm 69. When I went on that hike at age 13, I can tell you exactly when it was that summer, because in the same week that I fell in love with backpacking and had the privilege of doing that, the same week in LA, my parents saw smoke rising from a burning portion of Los Angeles. It was the same week as the Watts riots. And so many other young children, folks of color, did not have the opportunity they had. It is across the spectrum. It's incorporating to everything we do. Every meeting, how we change running meetings, these unknowing, God, you stop in a soapbox. We have so many unknowing and not intentional, maybe even like good-minded barriers that have been put up. And when they use the word systemic, there's a really lot of truth with it. And it's not easy work. I don't like being uncomfortable, and I don't mean temperature uncomfortable, interpersonal uncomfortable. I don't like making mistakes. But to start doing this work, you have to be prepared to do so. And more, it's time, it's intention, it's gathering around. You have a young woman who I know is listening tonight, Serene Chen, on your Mountaineers Equity Inclusion Committee. Boy, it's being willing. I'll stop here after this moment. It's being willing to have conversations, listen, not mansplaining, and not solving, not saying, oh, I hear what the problem is, and I'm going to come in, and this is the solution that you present on this platter. Listening, being open-minded, being willing to change, and more so, doing the work. All right, I'll stop.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable to that question, for sure. So Sky asked, how much mental and physical preparation do you recommend when getting ready to long through hike?
Okay, so I was looking for a prop. Question I get very often is, Scout, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you do to prepare? They're looking for some magical answers. And what they're expecting is usually one of two things. They're expecting a exercise or a training hike program, or they're expecting having the right gear, my magical gear list. And it's not the answer I give. And my wife's going to tell me it's wrong, but this is the way I like to tell it anyway. I point to here and I say, this is the most important muscle. Now, folks, when you're married to a PhD biologist.
So those are neurons, they're not muscles.
Yeah, there's no muscle there. But you have to really, going a long hike, through hike or not, you have to really, really want to be out there, because it's otherwise too painful, too uncomfortable. And so you have to fan the flames of that. And I did things on purpose. We from things as getting Frodo the One Ring and looking forward to giving it to her, to things such as celebrating the midpoint. The year before, don't worry, I don't have a picture of what we did at the midpoint. I decided we should shave our heads, and that it'd be a surprise to her. I wouldn't tell her beforehand. And she either would do it or not. And I looked forward to this for 2.5 months. And I sort of salted the trail with things to look forward to beforehand. And surround yourself only with positive people. There are a few out there who are not positive. You don't need to be around them. Feed off this positive energy. So much of it is mental. And to the extent you can do things that fan the flames of it, that are important to you, that feed your soul, do that.
And I want to add something on a kind of a more practical note. We find nowadays that when hikers come here, there are a fair portion of them who have never slept outdoors. They have never actually hiked more than a couple of miles. And sometimes, they go out there, they've quit their job, they have sold their car, they've sublet their apartment, and they come out here and they hike the first 20 miles and they're just broken because they didn't realize what they were getting themselves into. They didn't prepare. There's so much information out there. There's no excuse for that. So please make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, because that's a story we've heard more than one time.
Sorry, I'm laughing at a comment in the chat. I drove someone out on, I think the last time I was a lawyer in my other life, the last time I went to court, I drove them out, the hikers, to the trailhead. And I was going to make a court appearance, so I'm in my suit and drive straight back to San Diego courthouse. And the guy writes, because he's only seen me in that suit, that I drove him out to the trailhead that morning. It's
And that he didn't realize it
Sojo,
was you.
and he didn't realize it was me till like right now. And he puts it in the chat. I love that.
It's a great place to reunite with these memories and people, for sure.
Yeah.
A couple less questions. Are there any specific threats to the PCT that you could talk about? How can people help support the legacy that is the PCT?
Yeah. I write, you don't lose a trail in a generation, you lose a trail overnight. 2003 once in a 1,000-year floods that hit the Pacific Northwest wiped out 45 miles of trail, wiped out 13 bridges, and it took 10 years to properly repair that section, right? And with a lot of people effort, because once in a long trail, you let one section gap and maybe another and third, and the entire magic disappears, right? So what can you do? Be a part of the solution. Just like all of you are members of the Mountaineers, you're doing great stuff, the outdoors and for climbing. Be a member of a trail group. There's so many of them. There's Washington Trails Association, of course, the Pacific Crest Trail Association, Partnership National Trail System. Be a member, maybe volunteer on trail. So,
And about 9% of the PCT is still on private land, where they have agreed to let the trail go through, but they haven't necessarily agreed not to clear cut or not to change the route of the trail through their property. So the PCTA is in fact working on buying up that property from willing sellers.
Garrett, let me tell you what, maybe not you, but a good number of the people out there let me do as president of the Partnership for National Trail System. We go back with a team of 100 plus every year, and we lobby Congress, good old fashioned gumshoe going office to office. And we have meetings in almost every member's Congress office. And in a year's time, us and our 34 trail groups, we have total together donated over 1 million volunteer trail maintenance hours and dug into our personal pocketbooks for $15 million. So I sit there in a member of Congress's office, usually meeting the staff member. They're the most important person because they're the one who, when we need a letter of support signed, that's who it's going to go to. The staff member, I'm their 6th, 7th meeting that day. They've seen people all day long come in here looking like this. My group, my cause should have more money. And because there's so many of you out there, I, representing Trails World, I get to say this. I say, let me tell you about our gift to the American people. Last year, combined 30,000 people donated over 1 million trail maintenance hours to this national treasure and dug into their personal pocketbooks to the tune of $50 million. This is a public and private partnership that actually works. And I'm here to ask you to do your part. So thank you all of you who have helped allow us to deliver that message.
Great. I think we should leave it at that. That was a great way to end it. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. Thank you, Scout. Thank you, Frodo, for coming. The book is, so haven't seen the title. Yeah, here we go. The link was posted in the chat earlier. If you want to buy it through the Mountaineers website, please check it out, read it, spread the word, review it on Amazon, as Barney says, but don't buy it through Amazon.
Or review it on the Mountaineer site.
Yes.
Goodreads, all good.
And then stay tuned for more Be Wild events with Graham Zimmerman in May and many other events to come. Can't wait to see everyone out in the mountains. Thank you. Good night.